Okay, welcome back to part 4 of our picture project lesson in learning how to use Adobe Premiere CS6. So the next part of the song we're going to do will pretty much cover from where we've left off, which is right here at 16 seconds and 14 frames. And on that beat, we're going to go out to around 30 seconds to finish up this lesson. So let's watch the part that we're going to do. I'll zoom in on it a little bit. Alright, right here. We're going to start with the picture that is the same one being used a lot to go with the lyric, "How low can you go?" And we'll go from there. Then there's a sound effect.
Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a.
Alright, we're going to go to about there. You might notice I put a purple background in and added a lens flare that was moving. So I'm going to show you how to do that first, and then we're going to start laying pictures in and adding a couple other cool things to your knowledge base. One of them, of course, being positioning. This one here will have animation, plus we're going to add our effect called blur, and then the other thing we'll do is learn how to set keyframes to make the bass beat bump like that. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, back to my sequence where we left off from lesson 4. Starting right here at 16 seconds and 14 frames. We're going to first add a purple background. Alright, to do that, we have to go to this little button right here, new item, a color mat, which is a color background, or at least a color shape that you can mess with. Hit OK. I'm going to go with a purple. Move this to some purple area you like, and then move the circle until you find the shade of color. It'll change from black to purple. The color mat, we'll call it purple. And there it shows up in the timeline, or sorry, in the project panel over here. So I'm going to grab this purple, I'm going to bring it in and place it in track 1 and slide it up next to that last picture at 16:14. And then I'm going to extend it. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, move over, and extend it to about 30 seconds, maybe just over. As I extend, you can see this timer here showing me where I'm at. Oops, no, it's just adding. Well, I'll eye it up on the timeline ruler. It's about 30 seconds right there. Just over, that's fine. So we have a nice long 14-second purple background. Now we're going to add the lens flare effect. To do this, all you have to do is come over to the effects panel. Now you could go and find the lens flare from the video effects, but it would be a little bit easier to simply type it in the box, lens flare, and it'll pop up in the generate folder under video effects. We're going to grab it and drop it on top of the purple background, and it will automatically appear. And you'll notice in your effects controls panel that you'll have an added lens flare. Now if you can't see a panel like effects controls or effects, you can always go to window and either reset the workspace to an editing or an effects, or you could go find the window and open it down here, any of these windows. Okay, so the lens flare effect, if I touch it, I do get a little handle that allows me to move it around, which would change these numbers here. And just moving them to one spot only sets one position. So when I move through the song, it still doesn't move, which is still fine sometimes, but we want to animate it and have it move across the screen. So what we're going to do is learn how to set what are called keyframes, or reference points based on time and a measurement. And as time changes and you change the measurement, it'll create 2 points to help track the item from one measurement to the other. You'll see as we go. There's also a control here for flare brightness. I could keep it low, or I could animate it and set it to start low and get bright and even go over the whole screen. It could be a cool way to transition from one thing to the next. I'm going to set it to a little over 100, maybe 110. Lens type. Right now it's a 50 millimeter. You can go 35 millimeter, or you can go 105. They're all based on different types of lenses and what it looks like when the sun hits them. I think they're all pretty cool. I'm going to stick with the 50. The blend just kind of blends it into the background. I'm going to let it stay full. Okay, now how do we animate this thing? Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to open the effects control panel up wider. What you need to do here is be able to see this timeline. Now if you can't see it, it's possible that that little triangle here has been hit, which opens and closes it. So make sure you open it. And we're going to use some of the controls here, actually in lens flare, these numbers, to make the lens flare move from here over to here. Okay, to get started, this is sort of like I guess a race. We're going to start motion, start movement. I'm going to take the current time indicator, move it back to the beginning of this purple. Now this purple right here in this timeline are exact matches of this section here. So this is this. Okay, I'm going to move back to home at the beginning of this window. And this is the settings we're at right now with this. I'm actually going to take the lens flare center. I'm going to move it a little bit to the left. Obviously you can go right, up and down. I'm going to move it over to the left so it's just off of screen, just off of screen. What I'm going to do is hit this stopwatch, and what that does is sets a keyframe, and this keyframe is a mark at this time of this number setting. I'm going to move the current time indicator down. You have to move off of the keyframe for this to work. If I stay on it and make a change, it just changes that. So I need a new keyframe. So I'll move down here towards the end, and I'm going to take the first number and move across to the right all the way. I'm going to keep just pushing my mouse, and you'll see it makes another keyframe at this number. I'm going to actually go further, and all this does is changes this keyframe because the current time indicator is right on it. It'll keep changing it until I get to the final position, which is just off screen. Okay, so this keyframe was the lens flare on this side, on the left. This keyframe is the lens flare on the right. Now at this moment, it'll come to here and stop, because after the keyframe, it no longer has number settings for another keyframe. We could make a new change and get a new keyframe. Not going to. I'm going to click on it and delete it. That's how you can get multiple movements. For now, I'm going to take this keyframe and just move it to the end, goes out of view, of the purple. Sometimes I like to make it larger and even use the zoom box to double check that I got it all the way over, and I did. So now, if I go back and play this, I'll do it in the timeline. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a. Okay, so I think you get the idea. We could even, as it comes across, keyframe the brightness. To do that, again, select. Make sure you've selected the item you want to make changes to. I'm going to, for fun, set a flare brightness of what it is. You can do this or you can skip this. I'm going to increase the brightness and put that in about the middle. And then I'm going to decrease the brightness back down. And it'll go brighter and then less bright. It's kind of subtle. I have to make probably larger changes for that to matter. Alright, so we're going to continue. So the purple background's finished. Now, to get the bouncing picture started, the first ones are going to match the little phrase, how low can you go? 5 essential beats there. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to come over and grab our next photograph. For me, I'm going to use this one and just place it here. And it puts the image right on the screen. Now right off the bat, I can see I have a little bit of a problem. I'm going to open my motion. You should as well. because we're going to resize our picture anyway. I'm going to make it bigger so I can see it better. I can see I need to crop this off. So like before, I'm going to go and get the crop effect. Type in crop. There it is. Put it on. And I can either move the top down this way or simply touch the word and move it manually. Okay, that's pretty good. Click away makes the handles go away. There's a little bit of a line on this side as well. I'm going to touch it and pull that off just a little. Okay, so now the picture's set. I'm going to make the picture, the crop is done. I'll close it. The triangles open and close or expand and collapse. Even these do. I can get slider controls. Okay, back to motion. I'm going to make it smaller again, maybe about this big. Now the first time this picture shows up, it shows up here on how, and then here on low. How, low, two pictures, can, and then you go. So let's get the first one set. Let's find the words. So it's how, low, low is here. How, low. So just before low, we'll use the how part. I'm going to slice this new picture. Not the background, just the picture. And then I'm going to go to the next word. How, low, it's about here, 1701. So first cut was 1622, second cut 1701. It's the same picture, just cut it a couple times. Now I'm going to position them. So this first picture, remember, if I touch it, I get its controls. If I touch another one, I get the other one's controls. So I'm on this picture. This is a new picture, even though it's the same one, it's considered separate. So when I touch it, I'm going to come over to the position. I'm going to move it to the left. I'm not going to grab it and move it by touching motion because I want to keep things lined up. I'm going to use the numbers. So I'm going to move it over to, I don't know, about 420 for my image. Yours might be a little different depending on the size of your image. All right, now this next one needs to be over to the right. So I'm going to use the same controller and slide it right. Up. Mistake. I forgot to change to this picture. I just changed this one. Control Z puts it back. Alright, this picture. Slide it to the right to about, I'm going to go 1020. They look like they're going to be about equal distance apart. Yeah, pretty darn close. So here's how low. Now, can you go? So we did can you go bigger. It's can you. Can you is very fast. Can you go? So how low can, it's about 1705. You, let me make sure. Yeah, how low can you? How low can you go? So I'm going to now get ready for the next pictures. These two. Now one has to be next to the other at the same time, and the only way you can achieve this is actually by using more than one video track, just like we have the purple in the picture. So I'm going to take the second one and move it up. Remember, the first one is cut at 1701, second one, actually, yeah, second one at 1705, and I cut again at 1708. Okay, now, zoom in. Center yourself over those two pictures and zoom in. What we're going to do now, I zoomed in all the way. I'm going to have this picture last longer by extending it. And this picture will be a little shorter because it comes in on the second word. How low can you go? Yep. So this first picture, I'm going to move it to the left. I'm also going to make it larger than the last one. So I'm going to go to about 150 for me. Your number, now I'm going to go more. Your number might be more. Maybe 170 for me. About that big. And as far as position, I like it at 425. Now I did 420 before. I'll stick with it. And then the second picture, now there's two, one over the other. This is a layering system, so whatever's on top is over the top of the one below it, which is over the top of what's below it. So on this picture, I'm going to move it to the right. I think that was 1020 I used before, 1020, and I'm going to make it the same size, 170. So there we are, two pictures about the same size, about the same distance apart. Can you now go? I forgot what we did. Oh, I took them and made them even bigger on go. And then we leave on, we grow from there out to the next big base beat. I might actually, instead of putting one picture and growing it, we might just grow the two of them instead of what I did. We'll make a little change. So here we go. So I need to have two pictures to grow up to this point, to this base beat. So we have one picture already. So find that base beat. For me it was, I'm going to go with 1823. So I have to cut this picture at 1823. I could just cut it off, but I need another picture here so I can have two. And so it would be easier, instead of using this to slice it down, is to just cut it off and use the tail end as the other image. Slide it into place, because I have these two, and then I need to do it again with these two. Well, there's one over the other. I used 420 and 1020. These numbers are important. They'll actually help me to position the next two pictures and just make them larger. So I'm going to go here, and on the first picture, I'm going to slide it over to 420. And I'm going to take the second picture and slide it over to 1020. Now they're in position. As far as sizes, the last time we were at 170, so I need to be larger than that. So maybe we're going to go 200, maybe 225. Yeah, 225. Let's do that. So the other picture also needs to be 225. So we'll go from this size. There it is. Can you go? Can you go? All right. Now, obviously this needs to go, so I'm going to cut it off. And now the only thing we need to do is grow the two pictures out at us and blur them. We're going to do the two instead of the one. I think it'll look cooler. Alright, so first things first. I needed a drink of water. Alright, here's what I need you to do. You're going to take, I guess, the first picture here. We'll do the one on the bottom in track 2. And we're going to make it grow or animate, just like we did the lens flare across the screen. So taking this photograph, to make something grow, you use scale to move its position. The spin would be rotate. We'll get to anchor point later, and I pretty much ignore anti-flicker. So scale, if I were to touch the scale, I could make it grow. But the problem with this is they're going to grow together. Interesting. Alright, well, that'll be alright. It'll look cool anyway. So when we make it grow, we have to be able to set keyframes, just like we did for the lens flare, to have two measurements, a beginning measurement and an ending measurement. So I'm going to put it back to where it was. I'm going to set my first keyframe, and it sets up inside of the effects control. Remember, you hit the stopwatch to start an animation. I'm going to move this keyframe to the beginning. I could have also just had this here when I set the stopwatch. The second keyframe will be at the end, all the way at the end, and that keyframe will be, whoops, I guess not quite the end, I can't see it, will be larger. Maybe I can, we're going to overlap them. Let's take it to 325, maybe another 100. Cool. Now it makes the second keyframe automatic by me creating the change. I will move the keyframe to the end. So now it runs for the entire duration. Alright, now, same thing for this one. So I need to do the same numbering. This one started at 225 and it needs to go to 325, just like this one. I'll set the keyframe, move it to the beginning, change 225 to 325. We'll move that to the end. So now we have two keyframes, one at 225 and one that just slid off at 325, and it's there if you look closely. Okay, so now both of these will do the same motion. One goes over the other, that's okay. Now we're going to add the blur to help smooth out its look as it goes away. Now there is blurs that we can set with our own keyframes, and there are also preset items. When I get rid of the crop search, I'm going to open the preset folder and find the blurs preset. These are already keyframed effects. I want this to blur out, so I'm going to take blur out and I'm going to drop it on each one. Now I could do this two at a time or one at a time, or I can select them both and put it on only once, and it goes on both of them at the same time. Now they both have a blur effect, so as we approach the end, they'll start blurring. Now that blur is based on time across this second. How does it get controlled? Well, if I click on one of them, I can see that beside what we normally have, we added a blur. And the blur already has two keyframes here and the other one at the end that have been set to increase the blur. So that kind of sets us up with a blur already with the keyframes. We don't have to do it again. So there are a few presets in here that are kind of fun. Sometime at your leisure you should go through these folders and see what else you might be able to do with a preset that would save you some time. Okay, so I got my blurs on both of these. I'm going to close those folders, and if I go here, the blur is also in this one. The only difference is I collapsed these controls. Okay, so now we are through this part. Now, at this bass beat, we did this. So we beat two pictures twice. They bumped. I think you might see that we're going to set keyframes again. I need two new pictures. I'm going to go grab my two. Okay. I'm going to take them at the same time by selecting them both. Now they both come in. I'm not going to cover something. That's a bad idea. But I'm going to bring them in. Move this window up a little. I'm going to put 5 here and 6 here. It doesn't really matter which track they're in if I leave a gap, but I could keep things neat, drop it into place, move this out of the way, slide it in where it's supposed to go. Now they're in, but they're not positioned, so that's first. We need to get them in the same place on each side of the screen, and then we'll add the keyframes for the bass beats. So picture 6 is the one that's on top, the one I can see. Open up motion from your effects controls, make it smaller. I'm going to go with, for me, I don't know, about 25%. For you, it depends on the size of your picture, so you have to pick a number that looks similar to mine. If you have a lot of excess picture, you might want to consider cropping some of it off by grabbing the crop effect and dropping it on and doing a crop to get it to about this size. I also know that one picture needs to be on the right and one picture needs to be on the left, so I'll move this one over, I guess, to the right. I'm going to set it at that, I don't know, I kind of like the 1020 I used before. And then I'm going to click on the other picture and open its motion controls. And I have to scale it down quite a bit to get it to about the same size. Now the problem for me, at least, because I want them to be the same, is that they pretty much can't be. No matter what I do, one's going to be wider than the other. So the only way to fix that would be to crop some of it off to try to get them to be about as close as possible in size. The scale is about equal, but the width is not. So I'm going to go down here and grab crop, take the crop, and put it on picture 5. I have the crop touched. I can use these controllers. I'll do the sliders this time. I need to move the left over a little. I don't want to take too much of my arm off. I'll move the right over a little as well. Oh boy, too much. I'm going to go with, they look very similar now. I'm not going to measure or anything. I'm going to use the eye test and say that when they're next to each other bouncing, no one's going to notice the difference. So I'll close the crop down, come back up to here to motion. Remember, there's different categories for the effect we're doing. I'm going to move it to the left to essentially 420 again. Again, your number might be different based on your picture, but get it to look like this. Now they're in a position, they're ready to bump.
Lower than your mama's ever seen.
So the first bump will happen at the first
Lower
part
than your
of the
mama's
picture,
ever.
and the second bump will happen later. Let's go look.
Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime.
And it's gone by the next big bass, so essentially 2 basses later. Let's cut it first.
Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a.
So 1, 2, then 3 is where we're going to cut. Uh-oh. My After Effects Premiere just froze. I'm going to save my work because I hate losing my work when it begins to freeze. It's usually about to act up. Here we go. We're going to count 3 bass beats. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm too early. Ah, come on, I did it again. Not good. Come on, computer, come back to me. It's the blur effect, I think, causing havoc with my video card. I'm going to click away and get it right this time. I think it's here. 1, 2, 3. I got it stopped right at 3. Froze again. Let me let it catch up. Wait for the video to catch up. There it goes, I think. Yeah, it's back. Okay, I need to cut off these 2 pictures, so I'm going to select them both and cut them. And I cut them at 21 seconds even. Alright, so now we're going to add the excuse me, now we're going to add the motion, and once we add the motion, we're going to add a couple of cross dissolves to fade the pictures out. I was talking. Glad I have some water here. Okay, here we go. What I need next is for you to pick one of the pictures. I'll go with 5, the one on the bottom. That would be this one over here. And I'm going to set a keyframe to make it jump or bounce to the bass. Now we probably should be able to see the music a little bit better to know what we're doing. So I'm going to zoom in pretty darn close so that I can kind of see the larger areas that I know are bass notes. There's one there, one there. So first one right here, right as soon as we come in. So right as soon as we come in, at the very beginning of 5, I'm going to set the scale that I have and make a keyframe. Now I'm going to make this window larger so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm even going to zoom in a little so that I can see my keyframes better. I'm going to come forward 1 frame. Now I can do this by grabbing the CTI moving 1, changing this to 24, or even better, using this little arrow. I'm going to click the arrow once and put it at 24. So that's 1 frame off. I'm going to make this scale bigger. No, not that big. Maybe about, for me here, you find your number, mine is that. My other picture has a whole different numbering system because of its size, so keep that in mind. Second beat, now for the third beat. I find for a bass beat to go 1 frame from small to big and then take 3 frames to get it back to the same original size. So I'm going to move it 3 frames. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put it back to 11.5. And there's my 3rd frame. So it will now bounce. Pretty cool. Now I want to do the same thing to this picture. Froze again. Okay, you would think that I could copy and paste keyframes, and normally yes, but because these pictures are not the same size, I won't be able to do that because the numbers are what gets copied and pasted. So on picture 6, which is picture size of 25 for this one, not 11, I'm going to have to set it again. So I'm going to go back to the first keyframe, right at the beginning. I'm going to set a stopwatch to start my animation at 25. I'm going to go forward 1 frame. I could have also just hit that. I'm going to set it for something about the same size as the picture next to it. Froze again. Waiting for it to come back. There we go. I'm going to make it larger to about the same size. It'll be moving so quick no one will notice if it's not quite exact, but there you are, 38. If I zoom in on my keyframes, I can see I have 2. 1/30th of a second apart, or 1 frame apart. 3 frames later, I can go 1, 2, 3, or I could have moved it. I'm going to bring it back to the original size, which was 25, and there we are. That was an odd noise. I'm going to save my work again, make sure I can move things. Oh, the freeze of death. Let me see if this will come back. I'm going to go ahead and stop my recording and then come back with a fresh Premiere so I can keep moving smoother.